All right, welcome everyone to today's session of Getting Started with Your Remind Plan. My name is Nancy, your host, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Remind. I want to start off by thanking you sincerely for choosing Remind to facilitate meaningful connections with your community. We're a small but mighty team passionate about supporting your efforts and ensuring every student has a chance to succeed. And I often reflect on how critical the relationships with teachers were to my success and couldn't be more proud to work on something that facilitates stronger relationships in the education space. As a first-generation high school graduate of immigrants, navigating school and supporting my parents and understanding how to best help me succeed was a pretty tough challenge, but Remind now exists to make it easier. So I know each of you are doing amazing work with your community, so I'm really excited to help you guys understand how the logistics of effective communication can be made easier, leaving more room for the relationship building and learning that really matters most. So today we will cover an intro to Remind and what you can do with it at your school. We will explore your administrator dashboard, as well as learn about rostering and how to get started. And I'll be sharing some tips for training teachers, as well as how to navigate the resources from our help center. And if time allows, we can do some Q&A with the time that we have left. So feel free to chat in questions at any point. And whatever we can't get to at the end, I'll make sure to follow up via email afterwards. And also, please note that a recording of today's session and a copy of the slides will also be emailed out. So that's it for my housekeeping. Let's review our goals for today and jump right in. So in summary, the objective of today is to understand the basics of Remind and your administrator account, learn about the power of rostering and how to get started, and discover the resources and tips for you and your teachers to effectively use Remind. All right, so let's dive into what is Remind and its key purpose. So Remind is a communication platform that helps every student succeed by allowing educators to reach students and parents where they are. So what does that mean? I mean, our key differentiator is that we make it simple to reach people on pretty much any device. A teacher can send one message in their preferred format, whether it's desktop, app, or text, and it will reach the parent or student in their preferred format. So that's pretty efficient, right? And most importantly, we're a platform that is built to be mobile first. And why do we take this approach? Two big reasons. 90% of text messages get read within 3 minutes, and text messaging is inclusive to families of all backgrounds. So Remind is created to help you reach as many members of your community as possible in the most efficient and impactful way. And we also create a space to deepen relationships with two-way communication in a way that keeps the safety and privacy of our teachers, students, and parents in mind. So in order to properly support your community on Remind, it's important to understand your role and capabilities as an administrator on Remind. So let's focus on reviewing the oversight and controls you'll have as an admin. So I've linked a video here that goes into each section of the dashboard in detail. If you ever need to refer back to it, you can, and there's links to the articles as well. But I'm going to go over a quick demo of the parts I think are most important. So let me switch tabs here. All right. So right here, I am in our demo account, and as Principal Remy, an administrator for Remind Demo District and Remind Prep Academy. The Overview tab, if I'm in the Demo District, oops, sorry, wrong one, allows you to have a glance of statistics and help you understand how your school is doing in communication in the last week, and you can also discover your most active teachers. The Messages tab allows you to see a record of any announcements that you've had, also record of conversations, whether they're group or in classes. And this is also how you would send a message to everyone. So you'd click message, And then you can either do a district-wide message and you can filter out by role, or you can do a message by school. So some of the schools or all of the schools might be better to do a district message at that point. But you can see that you can dig down to message for each school, and then you can also dig in by each role. So it's pretty flexible in how you want to approach your message. You can do it all in one place and not have to dig around. All right. So the next thing is here's where you could see a list of calls that you've made, or where you'd go to make a call. Here is your list of schools as a district administrator, and your statistics over time. You can also see what devices your users are receiving the messages, which is great. And then settings here, I'm going to just talk about one piece of the settings here under the district. If you're going to roster, which we'll talk about later, through connecting with your SIS, this is where you would find that tab. It can only be done through a district level view. The school view is a little bit condensed, given that not all district administrators should have the same rights as school administrators, though it might be the same person. Very similar, the first few places, overview, messages. There's people list for each school, so there's no one that exists at the district level, only at each school level. So this is where you would find your people list of everyone at the school, and you can dig into each person here at the left. Without going into it, you can see their contact information, their family members, and if they own any classes or if they belong to any classes, which is great. Also, any notes that you might have for that person. And you can call them directly from here or take some other actions, adding them to another class, get their message history. And then also another great thing from the school level is the class view. So all the classes that exist at this school level. This will be a very important tab for administrators during cleanup. You can sort by date created. You can view how many participants are on there, how many announcements there are. So given that, you're transferring onto a paid plan, you might see some outdated activity. So you want to clean that up here. And the statistics here is pretty much the same, but just at the school level. And then your settings here go into, even though you can't set up the rostering at the district level, at the school level is where you send the notifications and view any errors. So the school administrators can decide when they want to notify their teachers, students, and parents about when the sync is complete and their accounts have been created. But again, we'll go over that later, just showing you where it is. Yeah, and then if you have auto messaging, which is a premium feature, this is where it would be set up and be sent out. A few other things about the dashboard, which I like. On the left side, again, you can see what district you belong to, what schools you belong to. You might see multiple or more than one, given that you might be an employee across different schools or districts, or have children across different schools or districts. And then you'll see your classes owned and your classes joined. And another thing to think about here, because it comes up often, when you're setting up Remind and you're creating your guidelines and everything, think about the type of groups you want to send message to. One question we get a lot is like, oh, our school has multiple campuses or a separate office, and we don't want them to get announcements from, for another group that isn't relevant to them. So you can create a separate school to kind of show the building or the different subgroups that you want to create. So this only applies to some people. So if you have any questions around that, just always feel free to reach out to support and make the request, and then we can configure it in the proper way for you. But just wanted to point that out because it's a common thing that people wonder about. And then going back to this overview here, I really like this right side because you can see recent announcements. So almost up-to-date or live activity, people reacting to announcements that are happening in the classes. And you can, if you see a teacher that day, you comment on it or congratulate them on the engagement that they have. So that's pretty fun. All right, so now that you have a grasp of what is capable as an admin through the dashboard, you can also decide what other admins you want to add. So you can add school admins and district admins, and you'll find them both in the settings area. So this is where you can add additional people and then also remove them. And then, through your training or your discussions with the other admins, you also want to encourage them, and teachers as well, to set up their account preferences. So they can fix their office hours, make sure that they're in the right organizations with the right roles, make sure that this is where they can change their password if they need to. Communication tab is a big one because this is where you can decide how you want to receive your notifications, and there's different formats as we discussed. You can get it in your phone app, and that's different from text messages. So they'll come out as push notifications. If you don't have the app downloaded on your phone, you won't receive them. But if you put in your number, you can always receive text message and make sure that that's marked to receive it. Also, email notifications. And then your desktop notifications. So if you're someone that is on your desk more often than on your phone or walking around campus, which is usually when it's most convenient to have it on your phone, you can have your desktop notifications turned on. Also, call preferences. Some people just don't want to receive calls to remind, so you can have that there. And last one, message option. So this is recommended to mark not allow replies. For an administrator that is regularly sending announcements school-wide, maybe just like a statement or an update or something like that where you don't want people responding because you'll see all those replies. They'll get a message that replies are disabled. So if you're an administrator that will be doing that, it's recommended to mark that, check this off so that you don't receive them. Another great thing is connected services. So if you have cool applications, other applications that you use on a daily basis, you can find some here, especially LMSs or Google Drive, that you can connect and just make a more streamlined approach to using Remind. And if you don't see any that you love, let us know because we're actively onboarding new partnerships. So we'd love to make sure that we have partnerships with the tools that you use. All right, that's the main ones I wanted to share. Now let's go back to the presentation. All right, so now that you have an overview of the dashboard, let's move to planning your rollout. Just like any other initiative, its success highly depends on the planning and execution, and administrators play a very important role into the successful rollout and implementation of Remind. But before I jump too quickly into the nitty-gritty of the planning, I do want to relieve some common questions that come up when this planning starts and your community is transitioning into Remind. So within 48 hours of your purchase, paid features should have been applied to your accounts. So to all accounts connected to your school. So all your accounts will be upgraded. And this should not affect anyone's class or message history. If they were linked to your school, they will still have them in their application. Usually if someone logs in and doesn't see it, it's because they're not linked to your school. So just have them, the individual, reach out, or you can reach out and to support, and we'll check on the back end and make sure that it was all connected properly. And because you want everyone to not only continue to utilize Remind, but utilize it effectively, you'll want to make a plan to communicate with your community about that transition. So these are steps we recommend to successfully roll out Remind to your community. We want you to think critically about what makes sense for you. And as we know that not every school or organization operates in the same way. So some steps might be modified or pushed back to accommodate your needs. But some key ones I want to point out, as mentioned, thinking about how you want to set expectations by creating a communication and usage policy that meets your goals and your community standards. You'll also want to try to maximize reach by rostering, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, and supporting your staff through training. And officially launching Remind by making a statement that your community has a resource at their fingertips. And that's really important to reemphasize that they can use it. All right. So now I want to go over how to get started with rostering, because it's the fastest, most effective way to get your school set up on Remind. We have seen adoption rates of up to 5 times larger compared to schools that don't roster. So rostering enables you to auto-create accounts for teachers, parents, and students, reducing the time it takes to explaining and figuring out how to get on Remind. And it makes your community reachable and engage faster with no one left in the dark about information that they need to know. And rostering also allows you to create classes and enrollments for teachers, which will grant them more time to focus on the many other responsibilities they have. So as an administrator, you'll have tools for oversight on the data you're importing into Remind from the student information system and directly on Remind. And then this back to school, rostering unlocks the ability to lead effective mass communication by enabling some advanced messaging features. All right, so there are 3 options to create accounts for your community, and you will see each option has different considerations to reflect on and decide which would be the most relevant to your organization based on your needs and capacity. So some quick highlights. Direct and Clever Sync require a technical setup that connects your student information system to Remind, and this allows for updates made in your student information system to be reflected in Remind on an automatic and reoccurring basis. So if you have a technical capability and can set it up, your life will be easier after that. But again, having those resources to set that up is key. And then adding people directly doesn't require technical experience, and updates are made manually. And so we have detailed guides about each one of these in our help center, and I will point those out later. So deciding between the 3 options might feel a little overwhelming, so I created a little decision tree that might help you understand which option is best for you. So you want to ask yourself first, is there accurate data stored in my student information system, or do we even have a student information system at all? But if it's not so accurate, you'll want to go with adding people directly right off the bat. So add people directly, and we'll go over that later. If a majority of your data is updated each year and you have a system that stores your data, the next question is to ask if you have designated and experienced technical resources. Has this person sent data to a vendor before and created the script that it takes to send it reoccurringly? If yes, DirectSync is the best option for you because it allows control of the data that you share and how often you want updates to be made in Remind. If you don't have the technical assistance, or you happen to be a very scrappy admin that can take time to put together 5 to 6 very detailed spreadsheets, you could try a manual direct sync. It's definitely possible, people do it. You should still check if your student information system can export the data so you don't have to build things from scratch, and you can just focus on editing and formatting the files based on our requirements manually. Or before considering that, if your organization uses Clever, which is a third-party tool, and your implementation could be halfway done basically, because this tool is used to roster other accounts for other applications, and so you've already shared your data, and all you would need to do is connect with Remind and adjust your sharing permissions to meet our requirements. So again, if you're already sharing that data, you're using other applications that are on Clever, that might be a good option for you. And if none of those work out, then again, adding people directly would probably be the best one. Now, because most of you seem to be smaller organizations, or perhaps maybe all of you have created classes on Remind before through the free plan or free feature, I'm going to go over quickly how you would adjust your steps to adding people directly, because it's slightly different when using it to roll out school-wide. So as an administrator, if you wanted to ensure that school-wide communication was happening and you needed to use adding people directly, you first would need to add teachers, parents, students at the school group all together. You can do this by creating a spreadsheet with 3 different tabs, one for each type of user, and all you need to do is have the name and the contact point, email or phone number, or you can have both. And again, you'll see this in the frame of the product. But once you have that set up, all you have to do is just copy and paste by user type into the feature product, and that will create accounts for all users. And note, if you notify that, if you do that, it will notify them immediately with the email or text based on what information you shared. So once you have all of your users, if you desire, you can create student-parent connections. So when you look at one user, you can, I think we had an example earlier in the people list, you can manually connect them, or you can write in the notes section of each profile with specific information. And note that the notes will be only visible to you. The parent-student connection is visible to teachers that have those individuals in their class, or to you. For classroom communication, you have 2 options, and I would pick one or the other based on the number of classes you have and the amount of oversight you need. So administrators managing classes less than 10, you can create them and add any necessary co-owners. Note that you will be receiving messages in this class because you belong in it. So if you don't want to be on it, you just wanted to help create them, you can just remove yourself, and then if you ever need to get message history, you can get that from your dashboard. And then for 10 or more users, it's just highly recommended to just empower your teachers to make their own classes, so you can have a little training on how they can create their classes, and best practice to have them create it quickly and effectively, especially if there's more classes that they're creating this time on the Remind plan. You can pass on the class enrollments in a spreadsheet like it was done for the school level to minimize that manual input. And then once teachers have connections with students and they've already had them in their classes before, they can just pull from those existing people lists to create new groups. So it gets easier over time, pretty much. So now that you've heard about the different options, I'm going to go over a few considerations before jumping into rostering. So whatever data you want to import into Remind, it's highly encouraged to review beforehand, and you want to consider that you have, or you want to check that you have unique contact information for each individual, and mobile numbers are preferred, as we've talked about the benefits of text messaging. The data is up to date, so you're not reaching out to old numbers who may have belong to new people now. Emergency contacts are people who don't need to be receiving updates on a daily basis or at the class level are filtered out. And then if you're sharing class information, that it's recognizable to the teachers. We found that sometimes student information systems classes are named differently than what a teacher would name them. So making sure that it's recognizable. And then you want to assign dedicated time and resources. So designate an owner with the necessary skills and capacity, because it does take some time and attention. You want to consider your data's current state, where you need it to be to move forward, and how you're going to get there. And then think about when teacher training should happen before your official launch, so that you have a whole team helping you mobilize and influence the use of Remind. So now that I've added a little bit more context to things, you need to think about and prepare how you can strategize best to onboard your community. So you might be a school that needs to work up to the full rollout, which is rostering all accounts, including class enrollments for teachers. So you start off by doing the organic rollout, where you just add people directly because either you don't have the technical resources, or you need to update your data, or you need time to set up the connection to your SIS, but have a way to message people. And then you start moving up. Once you have certain pieces done, you can roster, do a partial rollout and just roster teachers, parents, and students, and then again, move up once you finish all the other stages. But that's what you can do. You don't have to do it all at once. So aside from looking at your SIS data, many of you will need to look at the data that's already in Remind and linked to your school. This data is precious information because it includes your early adopters and most likely advocates of Remind. So given your goal is to increase engagement, it's your best interest to preserve that active data. So with that said, your community has not been managed prior to purchasing a plan. So likely there'll be inactive participants, and you just need to filter those out and remove them. And we have some steps here on how to do that, and as always, linking articles on how to approach that the most effective way. All right, so the planning and thinking doesn't end there. The nice finishing touch to your execution is effectively informing your community that Remind is available to them. So we've done the legwork of explaining what Remind does and how to set up based on whether you want to roster or not. So the templates are available in our Help Center, which includes a video that helps parents understand how to set up their Remind account. Now let's dig a little deeper into the preparation for your staff. You want to consider how often teachers should be sending messages, or you'd like them to be sending messages, like weekly, and is it an announcement, or do you want one-on-one messaging to be happening? Do you want daily messages to nudge specific outcomes, like improving test scores or attendance, participation? Consider the expectations that you will set for teachers, like, is this required? What type of settings do they need to have? Can teachers expect internal communication to happen via Remind as well? So is your whole school, all the operations on Remind? Consider admin expectations. So how often do you want to plan on sending school-wide messages? Who will own that communication and for what? How do you want to segment it? And how will you use the data, whether it's like the teacher activity and statistics, to celebrate positive behavior and continue to increase that engagement? And you specifically as an admin, how do you want to engage parents? Do you want to focus on attendance notification, event participation? Do you want to use it to communicate collecting dues or other important information? And lastly, the communication tools that you're using already, consider how they fit with Remind and how Remind fits with them. And so standardizing the use of them so people aren't overwhelmed and they know what to go to for what. And for the training, you want to have it either as part of something you already do, like for back to school prep, or a fun way to kickstart an exciting new tool is just to have like another reason to get together and celebrate. So you want to make a requirement for this training, just so everyone's on the same page. Again, it takes a lot of time to mobilize everybody, and everyone has to understand what's the game plan. Have them come prepared by signing in to their accounts prior to meeting together. And you want to include staff, office staff, extracurricular leaders, counselors, maybe PTO leaders, anyone in the community that you want to help mobilize this effort. And share those expectations that you were thinking about, or that we were thinking about together at this meeting, because they're in front of you and it will resonate more. And then also create a space for teachers to connect and share best practices. Maybe power users, have them present how Remind has affected or influenced them in a positive way. So yeah, and then, maybe create a class for all of those people that were in that training, and then just follow up with that positive reinforcement and some success stories. All right. So now that you've created your rostering plan, trained your teachers, notified your community, you can execute your launch date. So here are some listed resources on how to send the school-wide messages. and some sample messages to spark engagement. So note that if you rostered, you want to ensure that the trigger notifications that I mentioned at the school level that note about accounts being created, that those are completed. And again, there's a little screenshot here that shows you that we segment them by teachers and then by students and parents, because we know that you probably want to notify your teachers before you mention it to students and parents. But if you do the adding people directly, they get notified immediately. So it's a little different, and I want to call that out. All right, so that covers the content. The next few slides are links to the resources about how to get this all done. Our help center is organized, and there is a specific section for orgs that are on the plan. So it will highlight everything you need to know and what we talked about today. And like, for example, if you are thinking about what to roster, I recommend looking at the rollout plan checklist and the guide to rostering with Remind. And in there are the different guides for the 3 different types of rostering that you can choose. And if you need any help at all, we have a team dedicated and equipped with the knowledge to support you. We have different ways to reach out to us, but it all gets funneled to the team who's looking out for your message to provide priority support over our free users. So yeah, let's dig into any questions that you may have. Let me see really quick. I know we came to time. So how often do the statistics update on this page? It should be nightly. And then it looks like there are no other questions. I'm sorry, it looks like there was some technical difficulties in the beginning that I didn't notice. So this is recorded, so you'll be able to, and you'll have the copy of the presentation. So hopefully at least you were able to hear me, and then you can see the presentation through the email that I'm sending out. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope it's been helpful. You can always reach out, and again, I will be following up. And I hope you provide feedback on the survey at the end of this webinar so we can continue to improve and provide you the best support. And thank you so much for joining the Remind community. We're so happy to have you, and best of luck back to school.